the digital twin in a clinical trial, it just resembles in a particular patient population in a clinical trial. So in a clinical trial, you have a protocol, you start going to hospitals and places to recruit patient. We do the same. We actually needed to have the guidance from the design of the trial. According to the protocol, we start, quote unquote, recruiting patient. Instead of from hospital, we recruit from our own database, where now we have all 100 million of patient data in that database. And that is by essence the way we do the construction of the so in this particular situation, the standard of care of the chronic GVHD on its setting is prednisone. So we're looking at the same kind of patient population in that kind of context, fitting our exclusion and exclusion criteria, and we looking around a period of time to see how they're responding to that standard of care. And then we started looking at their impact from that standard of care, just like you do with a comparator arm in a real clinical trials. So that's where, so we have many of the similar difficulties and the challenges like you do in a real clinical trial. The inspiration is to looking at the clinical development, the clinical trial, trying to using the clinical data sciences to making a difference to the clinical development clinical trials. In doing that, we're trying to reduce the cycle time and reducing the cost for the sponsor. We are trying to making it easier for patients to participate in clinical trials. We are trying to making the investigators, in this case, physicians, are more actively being involved in clinical trials. So it's that kind of process we set up to understand a lot of the relationships among different kind of things. For example, why some of the investigators are good in recruiting patients and why some of the others are not, and what are the things causing patient willing to participate in clinical trial, and what are the things not discouraging them to participate in clinical trial. And all of those other things are, in a contextualized fashion for us to build different models, different ways to explain all of those variables and also the relationship among different variables. So that's where, at the time as the technology progressed, and which is the AI and other things, and as all our understanding to the concepts of different variables progressed, now it's the timing we start publishing digital twins in the past 2 or 3 years. This is the number 3 in a serious one. We have several others in the making. So it will become part of the routine, and the people will be comfortable with what we're doing. The fundamental change we're trying to drive is actually allow the people planning clinical trials to meet their patient before they start a clinical trial, which is not possible in the past. Now they becomes part of routine in our clients. What I meant is that you may starting with a basic idea is that we have an innovative clinical development candidate here. We are inspired to treat this type of patients. That's enough for us to start looking at that patient you're targeting and inspired to treat, and understanding who they are, where they are, who are the physicians treating them, and etc. As you can imagine, that gives us the tremendous benefit of learning how do you design your trial being aligned with the patient characteristics you are inspired to treat. That in itself will give us the opportunity to improve the design of the clinical trial, which will be minimized, if not completely eliminate, the avoidable protocol amendments you probably heard. So many of the clinical trials, when they started to meet the ground run, then they found mistakes and errors in the design. Then they needed to amend the protocol before they can proceed. That cost money, that cost patient, that cost the cycle time. So by using the digital twin now, you can actually avoid most of the amendments before you start in this clinical trial. But on the other hand, when we're doing that digital twin, in that process, we actually started to not only understand the patient you're trying to inspire to treat, but you also got the opportunities to learn to know who are the physicians are actually treating those patients. And in that way, it's not only just some physicians are able to treat that category of the patient in that disease, but more specifically, the experience in treating the patient that you are targeted and inspired to treat according to your design of the protocol. That will elevate the precision in your identification and selection of investigators to a much higher level. Many of the situations, the physicians, sometimes they have some relationship with the pharmaceutical company or CRO. They feel that obligated to participate in clinical trials, even they know they may not have access to the patient population. That's some of the things we can actually avoid. So those are the type of the things you can incrementally benefit. And of course, then you're going into the regulatory space. So there are several things, not just using the digital twin to replace a particular clinical trial arm completely, but there are also incremental benefit. First of all, you don't need to have FDA approval to putting a historical control in your submission for approval. So, and FDA and other regulatory authorities around the world, they do appreciate that kind of historical control. Not only now we can do that kind of thing routinely, but with much higher level of precision in doing that. So that's that. Then from the regulatory point of view, it would be much easier for us to argue using the digital twin to reduce the sample size of the control arm instead of completely replacing it. If we do like 25% or 50%, or even 75%, those are still tremendous benefit to everyone. In terms of cycle time, in terms of cost, in terms of burdens to patient and burden to investigators. These are all of the incremental benefit that we can harvest through the digital twin technology.